I don't know, maybe we should, I mean, it feels like we've already kind of gotten rolling here, but can we can we have y'all introduce yourselves? I mean, I've done these very formal introductions of everybody, but I'd love y'all just to maybe share whatever you want to share. Uh, Share about yourself and how you're doing and what you're up to and just whatever you want to share. Uh, does anyone want to jump in?
Well, I can start. Well, it is just like a thrill to be here. My name is Cornelius Minor. I am a Brooklyn-based educator, but I am a dad, a hip hop fan, sneakerhead, and really, as I look at my screen, I feel like a family member. That, when I think about my intellectual genealogy and who I am becoming, so much of who I am as an educator has been influenced by Eddie's work, has been influenced by Cheryl's work. Liz, like my little sister, who is constantly in my ear helping me to be better. This is just a really exciting moment. So as I kind of think about who I am in the world of this work, I am somewhere kind of among like these stars. And so it's really just exciting to be here with all of you.
Well, I'll go next because I'm going to have to escape out of here a little early due to the fact that I'm actually in Iowa right now, back in my old stomping ground, Pella, Iowa, Central College. So uh, that's a big part of who I am. Actually, I'm part Iowan. My name's Eddie Moore Jr. and I really got my start in the great state of Iowa. What I'm most known for is the White Privilege Conference, and that started in Iowa. And 2 years it was at a small college called Cornell, but the next 4 years it was here at Central College, where I am right now for 3 days doing some work with the folks here. And it's just good to be back in Iowa, just really kind of reminiscing on my roots. And also, just grateful to Brother Paul, who I've known for a long time, and now getting to know through this partnership more about the work of Cornelius, Cheryl, and Liz. Kind of seeing them, hearing them, heard of them, and now just feeling like I'm learning more about them and hoping we and they and the White Privilege Conference and I can become family even more. And so I'm exactly feeling like uh, Cornelius, that I'm happy to be here. I'm excited about being able to share a little bit tonight. And thank you again, Paul, for making it happen, my brother.
I'll go. So my name is Liz Kleinrock. My pronouns are she, her. Um, I am a classroom educator at heart. I have taught first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grades over the past 10 years. And this fall, like in 2 weeks, I will be teaching middle school for the first time, teaching sixth grade English. Um, how I'm doing right now is I'm very tired, I'll be real. There's been a lot of Zoom PD, so I'm a little like screen fatigued. And I feel like every day I learn about like a new platform or a new website that I'm going to have to learn this year. And it feels like a lot of them do the exact same thing. And I'm not sure why we're doing all of it, but it's fine. Everything will be fine. Um, I'm just like really overwhelmed to be a part of this group. Cornelius, I met actually through, we have the same editor at Heinemann. And after I did a talk in New York it's in January 2019, I met up with Cornelius the next morning, had never met in Brooklyn. He bought me breakfast and was just, I mean, he's one of those people where I'm just like, are you like secretly full of it? Like no one is actually this nice. Like he's actually this nice. Paul, I know I've been familiar with Paul, Cheryl, and Eddie's work for quite some time. Paul and I connected through the Liberate and Chill Collective, which was started at the beginning of the pandemic. Cheryl, I'm familiar with her research and work, especially as someone who is also from the LA area. And Eddie, I recommend your book For White Women Who Teach Black Boys to so many people. Funny story, I was actually scheduled to present at your conference 2 years ago, but had a family emergency come up and was not able to attend. But I'm just really in awe of being included with all of you. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. I was just here last night. And I'm just so excited to be here with the group. I'm so thankful to Dr. Gorski. He doesn't like it when I call him that. Just to pull us all together and just have the space. You know, so much of this work is isolating, and we get the hate mail on the daily, we get the stank eye. We don't even get the side eye. We get the straight just ignore, passive aggressive ignoring of our work. So I just really respect the fact that we have this time to be together and kind of heal and bond. And hopefully for the rest of the group and people here, they can find that. Oh, by the way, I'm Cheryl. I was an associate professor over at University of Colorado, Denver, but I just started this week at the University of Kentucky. What's up? And so it's great. I'm a full professor there. I'm actually the director of their teacher ed, their secondary teacher ed program. So, implementing a lot of this stuff, and with the new book that Cornelius and Liz put out, trying to get our teachers to go to the, white privilege conference, are all things I really want to work into. Some important aspects of me, I am COVIDing in Los Angeles, back home. So giving love to my LA folks and Cali folks. I did teach for almost 10 years for LA Unified, as well as New York Department of Ed, Brooklyn, represent. And I am an avid bachata dancer. I love the Lakers, don't even play. And I am a mother scholar, one word, don't even hyphenate, of 3 beautiful children. So just wanted to put that out there. The important stuff.
Awesome. Well, this is such a treat for me because when I was originally putting this together, I thought, really when I was thinking, okay, who are going to be the speakers for this series, I thought, who do I want to talk to? I mean, maybe that was kind of selfish, but who do people want to hear from and who do I want to talk to? And the other thing that's kind of neat about this is I've known Cheryl and Eddie for a while, and I've just recently, even though I've been familiar with them, gotten to know Liz and Cornelius. And so it's like universes colliding kind of thing here in the best possible way. I had thought that I would start with asking you all a couple questions, but now that I am reading the questions, I don't like the questions. But I do want to ask about something that Cheryl kind of brought up there that I'm just really curious about, which is I do some research about burnout, and I'm just kind of curious for you all how you cope with the threat of burnout or burnout, how that may have been exacerbated by recent whatever. And that's a question that's kind of come up in the chat box a few times over the course of the July and August series, but we've never really talked about it. So I'm curious how you all kind of deal with that, with the kind of the threat of burnout.
All right. Well, I'll go quickly just to say 2 things. One, as a recovering crackhead and alcoholic, sometimes for me, I'm always looking at the things I'm involved with as a second chance. And so I think having had that battle, that struggle, that challenge of overcoming and still grappling with day to day, the remnants of crack cocaine and alcohol addiction, I think gives me added fuel when feeling like, things are going bad, I'm exhausted. I mean, all the things that are real, just hearing what Liz was saying. And that brings me to point 2 that, I can't ignore those signals. I think it's good to be free. You know what I'm saying? Like to have my own enterprise, so to speak. But I can't ignore exhaustion and over committing. And so trying to get better at that and have some people in my life to, really speak the truth to me. Because sometimes when you're operating at this level, it can be lonely just because, I just find it sometimes for people to just tell me the truth. So I'm just really trying to have some folks in my life like that and listen to them. And so that's the two quick things I'll say.
And really, my answer would be a simple one, like finding community. That burnout is a real thing. Specifically in this kind of work, it often feels like we're pushing water uphill, and recognizing the community no longer has to be geographic. That community no longer has to be even professional. That we can reach outside of our profession to people who give us life, like Eddie talked about. We can reach out to people who challenge us, to people who check us. And so, to be quite honest, Paul, finding community with you and Liz earlier in the pandemic, and so many of our other friends in Liberate and Chill, I'm looking at the chat, and there's so many teachers from around Brooklyn who literally I run into on the street, and they buy me snacks sometimes, and so just that random commonality that we find. And so I am learning to look with a welcoming eye for any kind of commonality or humanity that I can find in other people. And I'm learning to hold that close.
I think a lot of what I have done recently to avoid burnout stems from a lot of the work that I do in therapy. I really love my therapist, really love her. In her background's in nonviolent communication. So a lot of the work that we do together is one, since she's also a person of the global majority, we work on strategies. So I do not emotionally absorb a lot of the anger that gets projected, as well as a lot of the emotional coddling that does take a lot out of us energetically and spiritually. In nonviolent communication, I really appreciate it because it helps reframe people's actions and words through the lens of what are their words and behaviors telling me about their needs, what needs aren't being met. And it helps me approach people with a lot more empathy. And it also helps me approach myself with a lot more empathy. I would say on a very day-to-day basis, also on the micro level, things like not connecting my work email to my phone has been really, really helpful. In my second year of teaching, I stopped syncing my school email to my phone, and it made a huge, huge difference. Entering this school year, I've been pretty clear with my grade level team. They're really wonderful, but I won't answer work texts after 6 p.m. and I will not answer them on the weekend. And you can email me, but I'm not going to get back to you. I think a lot of my identity is also rooted in being a people pleaser. So that personality trait compiled with this work sometimes makes it really challenging to disconnect. Also added that I'm not married and don't have children. So I think sometimes there's this expectation I put on myself where if I don't have children to take care of, then I should be spending all of my free time invested in this work instead of taking care of myself. But also found that throughout the pandemic, I spent a lot of time revisiting Audre Lorde and a lot of what she wrote about self-preservation and rest as an act of resistance and how necessary it is. And also there's an Instagram account that I will drop in the chat right now. It's called the Nap Ministry, but I see their posts every single day and they're always reminders to rest and breathe. And just when they come up on my feed, I'm just you're right, I should put my phone down and just take a break. So that's big picture and little picture.
I guess those are amazing. I really love all those ideas. And, hearing about people's backgrounds, and Eddie's journey through going through this and personal struggles, we do this work because it's meaningful and it means something. I mean, I want to remind people the burnout that we feel is real. It's not just, the nasty passive aggressiveness, not the joking around, I say, the white fragilities and emotionalities that ferret up and we're always having to dodge. I got hate mail on the daily. I've got packages sent to my university. I had a stalker who was fixated on my son, so much so that he found the social media of my colleagues and started talking about my son and how I was misguiding him to them. And I got packets mailed to me with a bunch of men holding AR-15s. It's nonstop, and it's gendered and it's race. And, I got threats of rape. I got threats of, everything. It was unbelievable. And that's the type of burnout. It just takes not only emotional, it takes a psychic toll on you, and so much so that you like pull inward, you become introverted, you become untrusting, you become really insecure, self-doubting. It's just really at a point where I pulled everything off media, my faculty webpage, everything, which is not a good idea because all the BS is left on there. So I had to ask them to please put it back, and everyone please, click on it. So on the Google ratings, it doesn't just show up all the hate mail I'm put on from conservative sites or whatever the case, whatever site that misread my work. So there's a real tangible issue there when we're talking about burnout, death threats, and not only to us, but also to our children, which as a mother scholar, it just really made me feel helpless. At the time, I just want to let everyone know, I was pregnant with I call her my 10-year baby. I waited to get tenure, so there's a huge gap. But my little one, we call her La Doña. La Doña, like, I was pregnant with her and I was teaching at 8 o'clock at night class. And I was nervous, don't get me wrong. I'm a runner. I still run 5 miles a day every morning, 5 a.m. In fact, since I'm on the West Coast and I have 8 a.m. meetings, I'm up at 5. I feel you, Liz. I've been up since 5. But these are the things that are real threats to our family. And the running, the guided meditation, the free Audible, guided meditations, right? And we're always about the free. They even have one on P. Diddy. P. Diddy has one out there. I listen to all that. If you guys go to Audible, there's this free one called The Office. It's dope. He's just talking about the things in his office, his stapler. He touches his stapler. It's super dope. You just go right to sleep. Breathing techniques. And I think Liz hit it, I study white emotionality. It's really learning that all these emotional displays are just emotional projections of their own insecurity passed on to you. And I can literally drink my tea and say, read these emails with an English accent and enjoy it. Say, oh, thank you for the data for my next book. So, honestly, at the end of the day, we're educators. And this is how I look at it. 2 things really help me. One, we're educators. We believe education can be very transformative. So all of us should be ready to teach the most racist of them all, right? Hoping we can transform minds. So that's our role as educators. And 2, when I think about whiteness and how it manifests in such tantrum-like ways, all I do is I think of my toddler. She's now 4, but I have teenagers too. They act, well, I'm a perimenopausal woman. I act the same way too. I'm going to put myself in that category. We have these tantrums, and I just look at whiteness and its tantrums, and I'm able to say, are you done? And I know I can, okay, you need a counselor, baby cakes, because I got to do my job. Move it, So I'm able to really know that this is my job. And no matter what kind of tantrum I'm getting, I know that I'm doing the course of what I need to do because I'm passionate about it, and it's the job. So, and then I know Jordan kind of wrote on the side there, Jordan Lippman, he said, I'd love to hear about your publishing and scholarship experience. And I do want to talk a little bit about that, because what I love about this particular panel, because I get on these panels with all these academics, don't get me wrong. I actually was just having, Zoom sessions with Charles Mills last week, just talking race and bourbon, But I think what people need to know is that there's something like popular press and there's something like academic press. So my publications, which I have probably over 50 peer-reviewed journal publications, are all academies, right? And if I do popular press stuff, it doesn't count toward my work. I have to always do research-based, nerdy, books. So I think I need to be very frank that there's a distinction with stuff like that. Like with white fragility, with my homegirl, Robin, who does that work, she was an academic and no one knew her before white fragility, right? So we have to really understand the publishing is a capitalistic enterprise as well. So there's different types of publishing. I have several books, as you can see back there, We need to get Cornelius's and Liz's behind them. But theirs just dropped right now. So yeah, it has different things. So my publishing and scholarship experience, I mean, I've been publishing and doing this work for many years. And so, but I'm really excited about this particular space because I feel like I can finally talk away from the academics and the ivory tower. It's not ivory and ebony for a reason. And actually address, folks, the teachers who really not need it most, but I think who deserve to have this knowledge and access presented to them. So just want to say that.
I'm curious about the rest of it because everyone on this panel has, everyone has either written or co-edited a book or is in the process of writing a book. I'm curious for the rest of you, is writing, do you feel any sort of therapeutic sense from writing? Is writing a chore? Is writing a passion? Curious how y'all relate to your writing.
Well, I enjoy it. Like, I mean, I'm a writing guy. So, I mean, if I didn't have to make money for my family, I would be writing all the time. It's what I absolutely adore. I look forward to it. It is my kind of quiet place that I can go to. It's my angry place. If I choose to engage, like I fight with words. I love with words. I grow with words. And so I think, for me, it's a real luxury, but I think that's one of the things, right? Like, I was talking with a colleague about writing and about how, the very reality of being an educator, right? That an educator in New York City, that my wife and I don't have tons of disposable income. So anytime that I take away to write, I am not working. And if I am not working, no food is materializing on the table. And so really, the relationship of who gets to write in America, who gets to tell stories, who gets to produce scholarship, those are all really interesting things for me to consider. And so I don't just write, for me, but I write, thinking about all of the people who don't have the opportunity to write because they're at work, or don't have the opportunity to write because people have decided that their voices weren't worthy. And so for me, writing is a very intimate act that is coupled with the opening of doors as well. That every time I write, I got to open some doors and leave them open for other people in the neighborhood or other people, across town who might not have the same opportunities.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I am working on my first book right now. I am in the editing process. I really like writing. I really hate editing. It makes me think about like going into this year teaching English in middle school, wanting to get as many folks like the four of you as possible to talk to my students about what a writing process is actually like and how it looks different depending on who you are as a person. I went to like a super elitist prep school, and I cannot recall a single author ever talking to us about their actual writing process. Besides, like, we learned, your standard like 5-paragraph essay. I learned to like really dislike writing. It was something that I had to do, not something that I really ever wanted to do. And it took a lot of time to unlearn a lot of those emotions associated with writing. I know that I write the best when I'm in a place of negative emotions. The very first article I published with Teaching Tolerance was about working with students whose trauma was manifesting itself in the classroom in very challenging ways. And I wrote my first piece after a particularly difficult day in our classroom. Like, that's where that came from. A lot of my book also, like the longest stretches that I've had, have been in places where I've been particularly frustrated with the state of the world, or after like a really rough teaching day. I recently completely like restructured the introduction in like the middle of the most like current uprising. It was when I was in DC at the end of May, beginning of June. I think I was like watching the CNN reporter like get arrested on live TV for like covering the protests, and was just like, I'm writing this book for an era that doesn't exist, for schools that might not ever look the same again. So like, what the hell am I even saying? Like, that's something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, but hoping that a lot of the ideas in it will still hold true no matter what school looks like in the future. it's hard. I feel like as soon as you like adopt the label as a writer, it also leaves you open to criticism in ways where like, oh, I just do this for fun. You don't really have to like risk that type of vulnerability. It's scary though.
I'm a rapper, not a writer. I really like to talk my words out as opposed to write them out. And so it's been a journey. It's been a struggle. There's my knock to get me out of there. But it's been a journey. It's been a struggle for me, but I've enjoyed it. I mean, it's a challenge and has been a challenge. And so I'm really trying to create a kind of framework that lets folks know that you don't have to start the writing process in the same way everybody else has started it, to create some new paths to book production, to telling your story. And so I've been really, again, talking about myself, not as a writer, but as, you know, a poet guy, a poem guy, or a hip hop guy, and trying to, you know, really speak my words out first and then revisit them and restructure them. And that's something Brother Resma taught me in reference to some of the work that he's been doing and is doing. And so it's been really encouraging. The other thing I would like doing is partnering with folks, creating, using, and trying to leverage some of my name and my career and my work to give other folks, to partner with other folks, the opportunity to get their names in the light. We're on a 10-book, one book a year, the next 10-year goal right now. And so all of those books, except for one, my story in the end, I want to do in partnership with folks. And so part of that is to be able to give other folks that opportunity, because it does feel good to see a name on that book. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I get to go back to the neighborhood and just take that round where I was, you know, in the past, you know, trying to sell dope, and now I'm trying to sell books. So it's a great feeling. I think it's okay to start speaking your words before writing your words. And that's what I would say in reference to my publication journey.
From selling dope to selling dope books. I think that's the, and I've had the pleasure to I had the pleasure to write was it a preface? Well, no, a foreword to for one of those books. It was one of the funnest things that I ever wrote. Well, I'm curious to ask y'all. I know at the end I'm going to ask you to share your book, so that's going to be a separate thing. But who are you? Who are the people that you're excited about reading right now? Like whose work are you? Like I can remember the first time. I remember the first time I read Cheryl's work, and I was like, "Who the hell is this? This is a totally different voice from anything I had read." And then the first time I saw Cornelius's book, I love writing that where the form and the content are both sending a message. I just find that so powerful. And I always thought that Faces at the Bottom of the Well was like one of the most powerful things I ever read because of that, or Borderlands by Gloria Anzaldúa. And just because the form and the content, form and content knocking me on my ass. So I'm curious about what y'all are reading, what you're excited about reading right now, and what makes it exciting for you.
Wow, and I see Liz grabbing books off the shelf, and so I'm doing some of the same. I'm reading, like, you know, I love what you talked about, Paul, like form and content. And because my daily work is with children, I'm also thinking about accessibility, and is what I am reading informing the life that I spend with young people. And so right now, I am really excited about Evie Zaboy. She has a new book coming out next week with Dr. Youssef Salam of the Exonerated Five. formerly known as the Central Park Five, and it's a book of poems about like essentially like being young and being Black. It's called Punching the Air, and it's in a really just amazing book. I've been so thrilled about it. I got a chance to read the advanced reader's copy, and then I pre-ordered it at my local bookstore today, so that's been really exciting. I'm holding now, I don't know, this is Eve Ewing's latest comic book. She's been writing a few series for Marvel Comics, and this is Outlawed. And it has really spoken to me as I think about architecting my year. So much of my year I've architected around the concepts presented in Eve Ewing's Outlawed for Marvel Comics, and it's all the teen superheroes. And there's this legislation passed in the superhero world that if you are underage, you are not allowed to engage in superheroism or vigilantism. And so essentially teens' power in this kind of physical manifestation in terms of a superhero book is silenced by the government. And so the whole book is about what does a teenager or a young person do when the government attempts to take your voice. And so to watch these superheroes struggle with this is such a beautiful parallel for the struggles that the teenagers that I see every day are going through. And so those are two things that are just on my radar, informing my work in a really big way. So Ibi Zavoy and Yusef Salam's work, and then Eve Ewing's work with Marvel Comics.
Yeah, I'm just going to drop quickly, follow up with Yusef Salam just because he's a friend, someone I befriended when I lived there in Brooklyn as well. And I got my autographed copy on the way, baby. I can't wait. I've been also reading about Black wealth, Black capital. Really, that's a mission of mine the next 25 years, is really to be talking and teaching, particularly with Black folks, Black males, about Black access, Black capital, Black wealth. In fact, that's one of the books I recommended. One that I picked up is about the Black tax. And I'm reading that alongside the Green Book, just as a way to remind me of where I'm going. And so my real goal over these next 10 years is to be building my mind around empowering people of color, BIPOC folks, but particularly Black folks where I come from, about value and capital for good, to do good things. And so I'm really excited about what that's going to produce over the next 10 years. And I'm really excited to be delving into a world that I have really no real knowledge about. And I've learned so much already. So that's where I'm at right now. And I'm going to wish y'all goodbye. They're knocking on the door because I got to go do a little book talk about the White Women's Guide to Teaching Black Boys. And so thank y'all, Paul, Cornelius, Liz, Cheryl, party people. Thank y'all for joining Wakanda. I'm giving y'all a big hug. Peace.
Thanks, Eddie. And he disappears as quickly as he arrived.
Okay, I'm just going to go out of order because I don't want to be like the old wise person that goes at the ends.
You're like the young wise person, Cheryl.
I told you I'm still 25.
Exactly.
They always say Black don't crack, but brown don't frown too. Asian don't raisin. So let's just keep it real. So, I think there's so many books, and I think Jordan had that question. It really put me in an existential crisis because I do read a lot of academic books. I mean, I'm of course bell hooks with Black feminism. I think I know Teaching to Transgress is most known, but I like her Killing Rage, because she's talking about wanting to strangle that white guy who wouldn't believe she was a professor. Oh my goodness, I get that all the time. So, do you have a PhD is the question I have. I'm like, what, girl? Don't even play. So, I read the stuff like the the Charles Mills stuff, and then I read the stuff like, Frantz Fanon's work, Black Skin, White Mask. It's been really influential in the racial psychoanalytic work that I do. But I also draw from like more popular press books. Like I do like Thondika's Learning to Be White. I mean, there's something to say about popular press. It gets the message really clear. Kendi does that really clearly, just kind of, this is how it is, and I like I said, I've known Robin before and after, so I know all her academic writing, and then I see how white fragility really took off in a larger medium. So, all those types of books. I think also one book I like to indulge in, like self-help books, but and a lot of fiction. But The Body Is Not an Apology: The Power of Radical Self-Love by Sonia Taylor. Oh man, that was dope. I'm a runner. I like I said, I do run 5 miles a day, and I put that book on and I'll do 6 miles just listening on it. It's inspirational, and all of that. So I do want to talk a little bit. I get some of the questions there. Someone asked, an anonymous attendee asked about like diversity and DEI. And my response to that is, if you have not read Sarah Ahmed's work on diversity, she has a book. Paul, do you, anyone?
Being the Change.
Is it that one?
Yeah.
Oh, or so,
Yeah.
not that one, but I like that one too.
Okay.
But she talks about specifically about DEI and offices of diversity and inclusion, and it was her first ever as an academic.
Oh, the other Sarah Ahmed. Okay.
Sorry, Sarah Ahmed. Let me put it on here.
Yeah, there's
Ahmed.
Yeah.
Did I spell that right? Okay. So so she has she has queer phenomenology. She did all of her academic books, the cultural politics of emotion. But she has a book particular, I forget the name right now, I'm sorry. But on diversity and inclusion. And if you haven't read that, she talks all about, if you're not talking about whiteness and white supremacy, you're not really talking about the real issues about why diversity is important in the first place, right? And then Emily asked, do you see yourself as a public intellectual? And I always thought I was, as a professor. My kids actually do. When they were young, they'd cry because they knew I'd have to give all my time to my other babies, the students, and every fall, when you get back to the university. But at the same time, I've been doing a lot of webinars for the mass, not just academia. And I feel like I'm actually having a space to engage in more public intellectualism. I am more shy. I don't want to do TED Talks. I declined the debate with Tucker Carlson, whatever, on Fox News. I'm like, I'm not that person. I don't want any more hate mail. I didn't do this to get famous or fabulous. I just wanted to write. So my relationship with writing has been something that there's times where I'm playing one song for 2 weeks every day. And I have the privilege to write as a professor because only 40% of my job is teaching. But I can cry. It's cathartic. It's healing. It's why I wrote Surviving Becky, give people a space to kind of process that trauma. And so it's been so amazing for me to engage in writing. And this is coming from my AP English teacher in high school said I'd never amount to anything as a writer. So this is Mrs. Fogarty. Take that, girl. No, I'm kidding. No, but so I think it's really important that we recognize that I have that, I read Faces at the Bottom of the Well by Derek Bell. And then, Melancholy. If you want real nerdy, if you want to challenge yourself and just be like, do I know what the meaning of that word is? Read Melancholy of Race by Anne Cheng. Yeah, she's a humanities writer about whiteness, and she does like psychoanalytics too. So every other word I have to look up, so push yourself, So those are some really great books, Audibles. Usually I'm reading just fiction because I read nonfiction for a life, and I write it. And in fact, I have to say the best things I've read in the recent months is I have to read national. I don't get paid to do this, but it's my way to give back to the field of academia. I have to read everyone's tenure dossiers to get tenure. Yeah, a blind review. And I have to read people's full professor dossiers, when they go up for full professor, which is the highest level. And I just see these people pour their whole lives, 20 years in academia, constantly giving so much of themselves. And I can't help but like tear up when I read what they wrote like 20 years ago, what they wrote 5 years ago, and just kind of compare their journey. And I know sometimes it's boring studies, but they put a lot of their heart in it. So they may not be as entertaining, but I see the beauty in everyone's writing.
I found during the pandemic that I didn't want to read anything new, like at all. Like I just didn't have the mental capacity to do that. So I actually went back and like reread a lot of like really classic critical race theory. I could not speak higher of this book. This was one of the first texts I read when I started grad school at UCLA, and is still like, incredibly transformative and influential to this day. And also going back and revisiting a lot of bell hooks, a lot of Kimberly Crenshaw's like writing and articles, and really thinking about intersectionality with an anti-bias and anti-racist framework. I think a lot of like ABAR work, even if you include like the anti-bias part, really ends up being focused on race, but there are all these other intersections of our identities and of other folks that often get overlooked. And like to the question what Cheryl was talking about of like, are you an intellectual? I think, anyone's history or lived experience that is not my own, like I'm always going to intellectualize that because that isn't my lived experience. It's not who I am. And all I can do is try to read and listen. And unfortunately, it looks like consumption some of the time, but I try to take that knowledge and utilize it in, positive, like proactive ways. So one thing that I picked up recently is Disability Visibility by Alice Wong. And so hearing from an Asian woman with a disability has been really phenomenal. And I really like this because it's a compilation of people's experiences and perspectives. I do really well with short stories these days because they're like small and digestible. And actually, Cornelius, something that I was chatting about with Cass is Isabel Wilkerson's new book. But interestingly, Cass sent me a critique of this book from an Indian woman, and she argues that like white supremacy within religion was like an intersection that was left out of this text. So also keeping that in mind as well. I am like 20 pages into this though, so I am not quite there yet. I feel though, particularly with disability activism, it's something that I'm still trying to educate myself on a lot. Like there's a lot of, ableist practices and tendencies that I still embody and I'm trying to, learn about and then unlearn within myself, especially like ableism in language and things like that. But just trying to recognize like where the places where I need to grow and trying to locate resources and folks who can speak to those identities and perspectives. And goodness, like I'm only one person with one identity, so it's a lot to learn, but trying to take it like, just one thing at a time.
A few months ago, Liz sent me The Phantom Toll Booth, and that's the best thing I've read in years. The Phantom Toll Booth, young adult. What would that be considered? Young adult reader? Or that's even earlier than that, right? What's that?
I think I read it in 4th grade.
You read it in 4th grade?
Yes.
Wow.
But there's pictures in it too, so it's, yeah.
Yeah, it's so good. Y'all are talking about disability visibility, and I'm like, Phantom Toll Booth. Such a good. That was one of the best gifts I got in a long time. So thank you, Liz.
I'm so glad. It's such a good book. It's like
It's timeless. Oh my gosh. What is something I would love to know? One thing from each of your lives that is not literature, not anything you read, but that informs your work. Something else that kind of stimulates you around social justice stuff.
Well, yeah, I'd be lying if I didn't say rap music. I mean, anybody who knows me knows that just like so much of my intellectual blueprint is hip hop. That I was lucky enough to start my teaching career in the Bronx. And so like people like Kool Herc like were a fixture in the early days of my teaching. And so all of these architects of the culture were literally in and around my classroom. So I breathed in so much of the culture. But even as a consumer, just like my way of seeing the world, my way of comparing things, so establishing metaphor, both like metaphor of language and metaphor of knowing, right? So like parallel ways of knowing, all of that came from hip hop. And then as I think about what it means, right, teacher as performer. So when I think about what it means to hold a room or a virtual space of seventh graders, I think about all of the performance there. I think about community building and innovation, and all of that is inside of hip hop. And so that would definitely like be my thing, that there is a song or a graffiti tag or a graffiti writer or a DJ cut, the thing that I do academically.
Let me ask you a follow-up, Cornelius. Who are some hip-hop artists that most people, unless they're like big hip-hop fans, haven't heard of, but people should listen to?
And for different things, right? So like my ability to kind of bring a classroom together. So every fall we take, and that's where my mind is right now. So every fall we take children who come from disparate communities or different neighborhoods or buildings, and we put them together in a thing called a classroom, and we attempt to forge a community out of these folks. And so my ability to do that comes from Jurassic 5. So like California, late 90s, early 2000s, like kind of a rap band. It was 6 gentlemen from different crews who came together. So 2 DJs, 4 MCs, all different styles, who kind of came together and made actual music that harmonized. And so I, at this time of year when I'm studying, how do I kind of engage in the delicate alchemy of constructing a classroom, it's all Jurassic 5. When I think about like surviving this pandemic and enduring kind of through this time, I think of Boots Riley and the Coup. That this idea that like this kind of very Oakland-based MC and his friends, like his DJ Pam the Punkstress, like they all kind of come together and they made art of enduring difficult times. And particularly his song, he has a song, like the whole album, he has an album called Steal This Album, which is kind of this anti-capitalist like album. And gosh, that whole album feels like this pandemic has felt. Like, how do I find the strength in the silent moments? How do I find the strength like behind my tears? How do I find the strength like in kind of a knowing glance shared among friends on Zoom? That's the Coup. Another group, gosh, when I think about kind of my ability to dream and to like, you know, that so much of the work that we do, Paul, right, is kind of this radical imagination, like imagining tomorrows that are profoundly better than our todays. And so when I think about my ability to do that, you know, that is, so a lot of the Dungeon Family stuff. So everybody knows Outkast, but like, you know, that there was like Goody Mob that operated alongside them. There was Cool Breeze, there was Witch Doctor. And so that whole idea of like how I take nothing and reimagine these palatial futures for my friends and for my people, like that comes from like a lot of that Dungeon Family stuff. So I mean, I could go on forever, but like that's where I'm living right now, just in terms of classroom community, like Jurassic 5, enduring kind of the Coup, and then this whole Dungeon Family mentality of like there's got to be better tomorrows. Yeah. I mean, and then right now, I mean, I'm angry, so all the time, run the jewels, you know, so so there would be that. But yeah, you got to listen to Killer Mike and LP. So yeah, run the jewels, just kind of because we're allowed to also be angry.
I'm so old, I'm still on like Poor Righteous Teachers and
oh, I get rock this funky joint. I mean, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I see somebody in the chat talk about like Charlie Tuna was like a huge like icon to me. One of my most prized possessions is I went to their tour for their second album and got a poster signed by all 6 of them. So that's like one of my prized possessions. Like, so I've got all this hip hop memorabilia in the back. So.
Nice.
I'm just going to echo off Cornelius because music has been my thing. That's why, you know, some writers are over at the coffee shop, you know, and they're doing their writing. I could never do that because I'm like blasting my music, you know, whether it's in English or Spanish or whatever the case may be, you know, I'm literally listening to all this music. loud, and it goes with my mood. If I'm pissed off, I'm listening to something, that just really gets like, I'm still LA, so I still go Tupac, I still go on the West Coast side. I like stuff like Bamboo. I still think the greatest, sexiest love song of them all is Blue Scholar's Life and Debt, right? Now go look that up. Blue Scholar's Life and that. You want a partner to love you like that, to call you a soldier, So, there's stuff like that. But then I also, like I said, I've been, as a Filipina, I've also been trained by Tiger Moms. So I was forced to play the piano, which then led to cello, So I still listen to a lot of Pablo Casals, the old school, Yo-Yo Ma, as an Asian American coming up and speaking out a lot in support of BLM and the social justice movement, so a lot of artists are doing that as well. I love Sade. I play her work. Just sometimes we just need to listen to her long, hard road, right? Because that's what social justice work is, and racial justice. It's a long, hard road. You just listen to that. Actually, I wrote a whole article just listening to that song. And I can't pronounce her name, but recently I've been listening to, and like I said, I do listen to a lot of Spanish. I'm a bachata and a salsa dancer. So I'll do Anthony Santos if I want to listen to a little bit of old school Dominican style, bachata, or if I want to listen, if I feel like I'll romantic, I'll do the Romeo Santos, you tell me what you need. I got the old stuff, and I got the liberating stuff, like Joy Arroyo, that Colombian type of resistance salsa. And then I got the cute salsa from so either of those, but it just inspires me. But one artist I really love, I don't know her story, so I don't know if she's socially just, or I don't know if she's politically correct. I don't know, but I just love, she's a pianist. And she does a lot of work with, she does a lot of instrumentals. So her name is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Katia Bunias-Tishavili. Yeah. And I still listen to classical as well. So it's kind of like from Marvin Gaye to that, you tell me what you want, I'll do it. But I really love to dance. I have talked about racism being the same old dance. It just puts in a different spin, and we got to be able to know that pattern, right? So dancing is a really part, whether I was telling Paul yesterday, back when I was in high school in the early 90s, I was a break dancer. Head spins were my thing. Jinkos and cross colors, I was all about it. And so, so dancing is still a part of my life, whether it's salsa and bachata, and our kids do it as well. Or it's, having my kids watch traditional Colombian or Filipino traditional dances, right? And that's the beauty of, I think, what keeps the beat and the rhythm. In fact, when I write, I feel it as I write. It's like there's a cadence to how I write. So I don't know if that answered the question. That's what I like.
I wish, along with my old DJ photos, I had old photos of me on my breakdancing outfit with my parachute pants, with the zippers down the side, at the skating rink, dancing to Jam on It by Nucleus.
I think Paul and Cheryl need to have a dance off.
Agreed, seconded.
Mm-hmm.
I can do the heavy D. I still got those moves. I still got the kid and play.
Oh, yeah.
Catch. I could still do the MR2, so don't play with me. Watch out. That's right.
Also, Corn, just want to note that my dad took me to a Jurassic 5 concert when I was in middle school because I was too young to go by myself, but he really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. My father is super, super white, so let's just try to visualize this also for a second.
Wow, that is amazing. Yeah, yeah. Well, Jurassic 5 hit right at that era where hip hop shows also became super, super white, and so it was that uncomfortable era where I would be like, do I even belong here anymore? But it would be like all of these, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I knew that it had flipped when I went to a KRS-One show, and I was like the only black person at a KRS-One show, and I was like, all right, it's over. So,
Yeah, I was putting on the chat there for those LA folks. We talk about Bamboo. He doesn't get as much cred. Going to his concerts as well, and Ozo Motley. I remember going to their concerts, and they shut the lights down. They took their instruments right into the crowd and played for another hour and a half with the security guards pushing us out.
Yeah.
They kept playing. So, something about the resistance, the persistence, and this, is found in the music. Nina Simone, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes just hearing her voice, just and the context of her lyrics, just put you in a whole state. So, music like dance, just like capoeira or Filipino Kali, or it's always been a resistance because they hid the martial arts in dance because colonizers weren't allowed. They wouldn't allow us to practice martial arts, right? So all of these things from dance to music have always been our resistance, blues to whatever the case may be. So it's no different than writing. It's no different than doing our consulting. It's just embodied in a different form.
Yeah. And I hope for folks who are watching and listening to this, though it seems like we might have gone on some interesting tangents, this is such an important part of this work that I think not many folks recognize or get to see very often, that joy and resilience and culture are such deeply embedded parts of anti-bias and anti-racist work. It doesn't have to be super dark and depressing and sad and upsetting all the time, that these are actually the moments since we started with burnout. These are the types of things that prevent burnout with us.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I'm looking at the questions I had sent you all that I was going to ask you. And now they seem they're important questions, but this felt this just felt more important.
And this, like I said.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, right behind there. I know how Kentucky does it. I got my bourbon, and yes, I did have some of Pappy's. So I'll let you all know. Keep it real. The bourbon is there, and then my daughter's essay.
I love how it's right by the desk, right? So you get the angry email, and then the result. Yeah.
Sometimes after Zoom, Liz, or in between the Zoom, that'll keep you through it.
Here's a big question someone put in the Q&A. What are your dreams? Anybody want to share what your dreams are?
This is going to sound mad funny, but one of the things that my partner and I talk a lot about is, we're parents. And so all of my dreams are for my children right now. And so the world that I'm interested in forging, the people who I'm interested in cultivating, all of that is so that my children will occupy space where they can be free. And Cass and I had this really beautiful moment actually right after I met Liz. But I remember saying to Cass, I was like, I want our kids to be like Liz. And so a lot of our dreams, when I meet people like you all, a lot of what we dream about and what we stay up late talking about is we collect Paul, we meet Cheryl, we collect Liz. And I think about all of the parts of you and the parts of your work and how I can gift these things to my daughters, and so that's the dream, really. Yeah.
I'm just going to cry as soon as this ends, but I'm fine. Everything's fine. I know I want to be like all of you when I grow up, pretty much. I have the absolute best community of people. And I've said this before, but I feel I can never say it enough, that I think when you find your circle of people, when you find your anti-bias, anti-racist community, there's no one who's just a colleague. I never just talk work with Paul or Cornelius or Cass or anything. There's always a personal check-in. There's how are you doing? How's your family doing? How's your brain? How's your heart? I don't care just about your activism is obviously important. What you're writing is obviously important, but I want to know you and I want to care for all of you, not just like the parts of you where we collaborate in a professional capacity. What do I dream about? Oh gosh. I guess like within the realm of this work, like I dream of a world where schools are joyful places that are centered around our students, where we don't have success indicators dependent on kids' races or zip codes or the languages they speak or anything like that. Just a place where like anyone can show up as like their full self, I guess. I dream of a world where we can move away from like binary thinking as much as possible. And something that I've talked a lot with Shay Martin a lot is trying to shift more towards like anti-bias, anti-racist work that doesn't center whiteness, because almost all of it seems to, and how exhausting that is. Even on like the talk for the American University Anti-Racism Center today, like had a great chat with Julie Williams and Christine Platt, but like so many of the questions, if not all of the questions we got after our panel, were around supporting white students and like white teachers. And while white folks make up the majority of like the teaching profession, I'm not even sure like what it looks like within schools to like not center white voices. I think I'm still figuring that out, but that's what I dream about, to not have to think about it all the time.
And by the way, sometimes Liz and I will be texting, and we'll be in the middle of a conversation, and right in the middle of the conversation, she'll just text, "How are you?" It's like sometimes we just forget to check in. And it's so touching when you do that, Liz, because it's so humanizing. It's like I'll be texting about something to do with work, and then she'll be like, "How are you doing?" And yeah.
Definitely. I've been in some very toxic spaces doing this work. Like I talked about the hate mail. Thank you for your love and your. In academia, it just gets worse. You think it's bad in the K-12, it gets worse. We know that 82%, according to the National Council of Educational Statistics, our K-12 teachers are racially identified as white. But I would say it's even more so in the higher ed, in the teacher education, the professors training the teachers. And so it's really hard to break in spaces like that. So I have to admit, what are your dreams? And honestly, COVID has made me realize I'm living it. Paul made me realize I'm living it. Now I'm serious, I'm gonna get all teary. But let me be real with you. This work's hard, it takes a lot out of you. But I'm sitting here as a full professor, less than 3% of the US full professoriate. I'm living less than 3%. You're looking at it right here. I'm actually been hired to be a director of a teacher ed program to change things. They're ready for it, in the South, in Kentucky, and I commute from LA to Kentucky. COVID's reminded me it's my family. My partner has we've reduced down to a one income family, and Paul has given us an opportunity to keep this work alive and in such a healthy space, and to be recognized. Because at my old institution, they wouldn't even announce that I got a huge award. This is going to be nerdy, but the American Educational Research Association is the largest professional worldwide association for educators and researchers. And I just won the Mid-Career Award for teacher education. They never announced it. But my new university is all over the place, right? So I have to admit, I put up with so much bullshit. Unbelievable. And I'm living the dream. COVID has reminded me the most important things. And it's this community building, and it's my family, and doing things that I love, and persevering. And I think that's the most beautiful thing. So I have to admit, my mom had a heart attack about a week and a half ago, and I carried her unconscious to the ER. I live with her here in California. And it reminded me I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky, and I'm so privileged. And I'm thankful every day. And so that's why when people expect that fierceness when I write, I will give it to you 20-fold. So I'm living my dream. right here with you right now. So.
Thank you all. I can't believe how lucky I am to be connected with you all. Gosh, it's it's just so amazing. And I know, we're all probably private people to some extent, because when you have a public profile, there are some things you want to be private about. And so what a lot of people see us as are these sort of caricatures. If I'm doing a keynote, people think that's who I am. But this is also who I am. In fact, this is actually the real me. That's the me trying to manufacture some energy so I don't put everyone to sleep with my monotone voice. And my, but it's such an honor to be connected with you all. We have about 4 minutes left. So I just want to hand it back over to y'all. Is there anything y'all want to say to wrap things up here?
Oh, should we share our books that you told us to?
Yeah, I did ask, and some of you have some have already shared them, but I did ask each person to share a book by a person of color that does not get the attention, where a book that's awesome by a person of color who is doing awesome work but is not getting the same attention as the Robin DiAngelo or the whatever's jumping off the shelves these days. So yeah, it'd be great if each of you could, and I'll put this link back in the chat box for where folks can get these books if you want them. Anybody?
And I'll jump in with mine. Mine were really, I think, again, I'm always thinking about children and books that I can read with children, because I'm always thinking about critical humility and making sure that we raise the children who will be better than their white parents, that we raise the boys who will be better than their fathers, that we raise, the rich kids who will be better than the parents who, bequeath them all the wealth. And so I think a lot about the histories that we know and the histories that we silence. And so right now, I am really excited about this book, that so much of this world has been impacted by settler colonialism, and we never name it. And Debbie Reese and the work that she has done to bring these knowledges to young people is so important. So I just really respect and admire what Debbie Reese is doing. And so again, an Indigenous people's history of the United States has been really important for me as a middle school teacher. But then for me as a scholar, Charlene Carruthers' Unapologetic has been huge. That again, if we center the people who have been historically marginalized, we all win. And it's such a simple concept, but we're so far away from it. And so, like Liz, I've been seeking to outgrow myself by thinking about groups that I don't always think about. And I think it's been really, really important for me to center Black, queer, feminist thought in almost all of my work. And so.
I guess for me, I showed you a lot of books, but I'm supposed to pick. Can I just say some of my homeboys and homegirls in academia? Because, we're not popular press. I know we're nerdy, and we are. Sometimes we're really socially awkward. You think we're great when we're doing our national or international speaking, but we just like to talk about the Lakers or, or stuff that is really weird, like our awkwardness. I think right now, I want to just promote, Subini Anamana's work. She's over at Stanford now. We're all like, wow, she does DisCrit. It's a cross between critical race theory and disability studies. So, her work is really great, and she does a lot of her work on Black incarcerated girls. And so I think that's a really important work and cross-section, intersectional, to draw from Kimberly Crenshaw. it's just a great way of approaching intersectional approaches with different marginalized identities. I also really love, he's a good homeboy, and he's just like super dope. If you don't know him, he's a professor named Ed Brockenbrough. He does queer research on queer or Black queer studies or queer students of color and how they experience the K-12 pipeline and in teacher education. So, as well as Black male teachers, you know, so I respect him as a human being and I respect him as a scholar. So Ed Brockenbrough, you know, and another person who I think, you know, I'm sorry, these are a lot of homies. I can say a lot, but and I'm doing the up and some of them who are not tenured yet. So some who just got tenured. Dr. Lamar Johnson over at Michigan State. He's dope as hell. He does critical race English education for K-12 English, secondary English teachers. And I just think his frameworks on Black education and trauma and anti-Black violence, you know, in English education, it's just such a beautiful way. It's kind of like a Toni Morrison playing in the dark-esque type of, playing in the dark is another whiteness in the literary canon. I'm sorry, I'm an encyclopedia. So, but those things are just, those people are great human beings and they're great scholars. So please, you know, just holler at them, Facebook at them. They're dope as hell. So.
The book I chose is Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown. I love this book. It was transformative. Getting back to this work also has to be rooted in joy and self-love. And while like the main focus of this book is talking about like sex and drugs and food and like all the things that we've been conditioned to like be ashamed of and hide, but things that I think just very naturally make us feel good and make us feel alive, and to destigmatize like the shame surrounding those activities. Like in my personal life, like I use cannabis as a way to like de-stress. I would prefer to use that and to like be medicated. I'm also super passionate about cannabis justice and like the intersection of cannabis justice and racial justice in the United States, and how it impacts mass incarceration. I love this book. It made me think so much about just like a lot of the lessons that I had been conditioned to believe to be true. And I would say that in the process of learning and unlearning, like this was such a huge influence in like my unlearning process.
Thank you all. And I'm going to plug in that link one more time. I had them send me these books ahead of time so I could put them all in one place for folks to find. So we're out of time, but this has been recorded, so I'll send out the link tomorrow. Thank you all so much. I love you all. I just really appreciate being able to spend this time with you and connecting with y'all, and looking forward to more of this. So, thank you all for tuning in on an extra night, and we'll see y'all again soon. Thanks, everyone.